The speech that started a war. The Galactic Concord had witnessed countless declarations of war. Some had been ceremonial, wrapped in ancient rituals and accompanied by orchestras whose notes echoed across vacuum through sophisticated quantum transmitters. Others had been cold, delivered by emotionless machine intelligences that calculated victory before their fleets even departed. None had ever begun with laughter. Ambassador Elias Ward stood alone in the center of the Celestial Forum, a circular chamber larger than most cities. Thousands of delegates representing nearly 400 intelligent species watched from floating platforms arranged in endless tiers. Above them, stars shimmered through the transparent dome. Before them floated Supreme Executor Zakel, ruler of the Kath Dominion. His armored exoskeleton reflected crimson light as he addressed the assembly. Humanity has ignored every warning. His voice boomed through synchronized translators. They have colonized systems designated for superior civilizations. They have refused tribute. They have rejected our authority. A pause. The Dominion therefore declares humanity an enemy of galactic order. The chamber remained silent. Many species lowered their eyes. This was how history always unfolded. The Dominion chose a target. The target disappeared. For nearly 6,000 years, the Kath had expanded through overwhelming military force. Entire civilizations surrendered before the first orbital bombardment began. No one resisted. Resistance was extinction. Zakel slowly turned toward Elias. Representative of Earth, you have been granted the traditional right of final response. The human ambassador adjusted his simple navy blue suit. No armor. No ceremonial robes. No weapons. He looked almost painfully ordinary compared to the towering alien commanders surrounding him. Then he smiled. Not nervously. Not defiantly. Amused. Several translators hesitated, unsure how to interpret the emotional cues. Elias chuckled softly. I'm sorry. I really tried not to laugh. Confused whispers spread throughout the chamber. The Supreme Executor narrowed 4 golden eyes. You find your extinction humorous? Elias shook his head. No. I find your intelligence assessment humorous. More whispers. The delegates stared. Nobody spoke to Zakel that way. Nobody. The Kath leader's claws scraped against polished crystal. Explain yourself. Elias folded his hands behind his back. You believe you've declared war on another peaceful trade civilization. He looked around the massive chamber. You haven't. You've declared war on the descendants of persistence itself. Silence. Elias continued. Before humans ever built cities, our ancestors survived predators stronger than us. Faster than us. Covered in claws and teeth. We didn't win because we were bigger. We won because we refused to stop. Several predator species shifted uneasily. The human's heartbeat remained perfectly calm. Our oceans tried to kill us. Our diseases tried to kill us. Our own weather tried to kill us. Our history is a record of surviving things that should have wiped us out. He looked directly at Zakel. And eventually, we got very good at surviving. The Supreme Executor laughed. A deep, metallic sound echoed across the chamber. Primitive mythology. Elias shrugged. If that's what helps you sleep. One enormous display illuminated behind the ambassador. Without warning, the delegates gasped. Earth's military insignia appeared. No one had authorized that transmission. A calm female voice echoed throughout the forum. Emergency Priority Channel. This is Admiral Sophia Reyes. Human Strategic Command has acknowledged the Dominion's declaration. Every delegate froze. The transmission continued. Per Interstellar Defense Protocol. All civilian evacuation plans have been activated. All reserve fleets recalled. Industrial conversion initiated. Planetary defense status, Ryan. The words meant little to most aliens. To the few who understood military logistics, they felt genuine fear. One elderly H delegate whispered, "They are mobilizing." Another answered, "Already." The declaration had occurred less than 3 minutes earlier. Admiral Reyes continued. Estimated wartime manufacturing output. Numbers appeared. Then more numbers. Entire columns filled the display. Shipyards. Factories. Drone production. Fusion reactor expansion. Nanoforge activation. The estimates climbed higher and higher. Several economic analysts began recalculating, then stopped. Their calculations couldn't possibly be correct. One industrial species quietly fainted. The Dominion's own intelligence officers exchanged uncertain looks. These production figures exceeded humanity's known capabilities by nearly 20 times. Impossible. Unless they had hidden almost everything. Elias looked back toward Zakel. You spent 50 years spying on our fleets. You counted our warships. You mapped our colonies. You even infiltrated our research institutes. The ambassador's smile slowly disappeared. But you never asked the simplest question. The chamber grew perfectly silent. What, Elias asked softly, does a species build after 3 centuries without a major war? No one answered. He answered for them. Everything. The display changed. Hundreds of civilian factories shifted color. Blue. Then red. Civilian shipyards became military construction sites. Mining operations transformed into weapons production. Commercial drone facilities switched to autonomous combat manufacturing. The conversion time. 36 hours. Impossible. Unless it had been planned decades earlier. The Earth Intelligence Director suddenly stood. Supreme Executor. His voice trembled. We may have underestimated. Zakel silenced him with a raised claw. We underestimate nothing. Elias sighed. No. You underestimated one thing. And unfortunately for you, it's the only thing that matters. He looked across every delegate. Every species. Every observer. Then spoke the sentence that would later appear in every galactic history text. Congratulations. You just declared war on the most lethal species alive. Far away, beyond hundreds of star systems. Human factories awakened. Ancient shipyards lit their dormant reactors. Hidden fleets departed silent docks. And buried beneath mountains on Earth itself, massive vault doors that had not opened in nearly a century slowly began to move. Inside them, something enormous opened its eyes. The sleeping giant awakens. The first reports reached the Galactic Concord less than 6 hours after the declaration. Not from spies. Not from scouts. From commerce. Across human space, the civilian trade vanished almost overnight. Freighters that had spent decades hauling food, machinery, and medical supplies disappeared from every commercial lane. Passenger liners cancelled every route. Luxury orbital stations shut their doors without explanation. Entire shipping networks simply stopped. To most species, it looked like economic suicide. To military analysts, it looked like preparation. Inside the Dominion's Grand War Chamber, Supreme Executor Zakel stared at the holographic map suspended above a circular table of black crystal. Hundreds of red icons marked non-human colonies. Blue symbols represented Earth invasion fleets. The plan was flawless. It always had been. Strike 3 frontier systems simultaneously. Destroy their orbital defenses. Capture the industrial worlds. Force unconditional surrender within 30 days. It was the same strategy that had broken empires 1,000 times before. The intelligence minister entered, carrying a data prism. There is additional information. Zakel barely looked up. Proceed. The humans are not reinforcing their borders. A murmur spread through the chamber. One admiral laughed. They are surrendering already. The minister shook his head. No. He activated the prism. The image changed. Thousands of civilian vessels were moving, but not toward the front lines. They were heading deeper into human territory. Families. Factories. Research stations. Hospitals. Entire orbital habitats. Everything valuable was relocating behind layers of prepared defenses. They are clearing the battlefield, one strategist whispered. Another officer frowned. They are abandoning territory. The intelligence minister looked almost uncomfortable. No. They are choosing where the war will be fought. That silenced the room. On Earth, there was no panic. There were no riots. No desperate crowds filling the streets. Instead, there was purpose. Children continued attending school. Hospitals remained open. Restaurants served dinner as they always had. The only noticeable difference was the pace. Everyone moved a little faster. As if an invisible clock had started ticking. Deep beneath Geneva, inside Humanity's Unified Defense Command, Admiral Sophia Reyes stood before a wall-sized tactical display. Around her sat representatives from every human colony. Military commanders. Scientists. Industrial leaders. Even historians. A young officer spoke first. The Dominion's 1st, 3rd, and 9th fleets have crossed the neutral zone. Estimated arrival at New Carthage in 92 hours. Reyes nodded. They are following the prediction. Another officer looked puzzled. Prediction. A gray-haired historian smiled faintly. They've invaded exactly the way every previous empire invaded. Several younger officers exchanged confused glances. The historian expanded the display. Images appeared. Ancient Earth battlefields. Roman legions. Mongol horse archers. World War battle maps. Carrier strike groups. Orbital fleet formations. They all believed overwhelming force guaranteed victory. He paused. And they all discovered the same lesson. The enemy gets a vote. Soft laughter spread through the command center. Not because war was amusing. Because the pattern was familiar. Humanity had spent centuries studying conflict not to glorify it, but to understand it. Every failure. Every victory. Every catastrophic mistake. Every impossible comeback. No civilization in non-space possessed such an uninterrupted record of warfare. The galaxy considered that barbaric. Humanity considered it education. Far beneath the Rocky Mountains, blast doors hundreds of meters thick rolled open for the first time in 83 years. Dust drifted through beams of white light. Rows upon rows of colossal machines waited in perfect silence. They were not new. Some were older than the oldest officers now entering the chamber. Each bore scratches from forgotten conflicts. Each had been maintained every day despite never being used. An engineer ran his hand across the hull of one immense warship. I never thought I'd actually see this. His supervisor nodded. None of us did. Above them, the automated cranes came alive. Fusion cores ignited. Power flowed through systems that had slept for generations. The machine responded instantly. As if it had only been waiting. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the cavern. Strategic Arsenal Platform Atlas. Operational status. A pause. Online. Across dozens of hidden facilities, identical announcements followed. Entire classes of warships the galaxy had never seen officially existed. Planetary defense platforms. Autonomous drone foundries. Deep space repair carriers. Command vessels designed for wars so large they bordered on the unimaginable. Not secret weapons. Prepared weapons. Built slowly, patiently, quietly, during 300 years of peace. Meanwhile, the Dominion celebrated. Across Earth space, news broadcasts replayed the declaration endlessly. Commentators predicted another swift victory. Military parades filled capital walls. Citizens cheered as invasion fleets departed. The humans are clever traders, one analyst proclaimed. But commerce has never defeated conquest. Millions agreed. They had every reason to. History favored the Dominion. Until now. Not everyone shared that confidence. Commander Veltor, captain of the Dominion battleship Relentless, reviewed intelligence reports alone in his quarters. Something bothered him. The numbers. They didn't fit. Human fleet estimates kept changing. Yesterday they possessed approximately 800 combat ships. Today, nearly 3,000 confirmed signatures. Tomorrow's projections exceeded 5,000. Impossible. Shipyards couldn't produce vessels that quickly. Unless they hadn't been built recently. He opened another report. Civilian transports. Cargo haulers. Mining platforms. Construction barges. Thousands had vanished from commercial tracking. Not destroyed. Converted. His blood ran cold. Human engineering standards required civilian hulls to be modular. Military conversion had been considered an outdated theory. No sane civilization would design its economy that way. Would they? Veltor requested archived human engineering documents. Most were public. He began reading. The deeper he looked, the quieter he became. Every cargo vessel contained reinforced structural members. Every fusion engine exceeded civilian requirements. Every navigation computer accepted encrypted military firmware. Every manufacturing plant possessed unused production modes. Nothing had been hidden. No one had understood what they were seeing. The humans had built an economy that could become a war machine. Not in years. In days. Veltor whispered to himself. This wasn't preparation for one war. His voice barely escaped his throat. This civilization has been preparing forever. At the edge of Dominion space, long-range sensors finally detected the first human response. Not an attack. Not an ambush. A single transmission. It carried no encryption. No threats. Only a short message addressed to every Dominion commander. Admiral Sophia Reyes appeared on every bridge. Calm. Professional. Almost sympathetic. You still have time. Withdraw your fleets. No human world has been attacked. No lives have been lost. We will accept your retreat. She paused. But understand this. If you cross the next boundary, this conflict will no longer be about territory. Her expression hardened. It will become about ensuring you can never threaten another civilization again. The transmission ended. Silence filled every Dominion bridge. Some captains exchanged uneasy looks. Others scoffed. Supreme Executor Zakel watched the recording only once. Then he crushed the projector in one armored hand. Advance. Thousands of warships accelerated together. The invasion had begun. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, hidden beyond the stars, humanity was waiting, not with desperation, but with the quiet confidence of a species that had spent centuries preparing for the day someone finally made the greatest mistake in galactic history. The first battle. The Dominion's first expeditionary fleet crossed the final navigation beacon precisely on schedule. To Supreme Executor Zakel, it was another routine advance. To Admiral Kovash, commanding the invasion from the flagship Iron Judgment, it was simply the opening move in a campaign that would soon be taught in Kath military academies. 3,000 warships emerged from hyperspace in flawless formation. Battleships formed the spearhead. Cruisers spread into overlapping defensive screens. Carrier groups deployed interceptor swarms. Supply ships remained safely behind the main force. It was textbook doctrine. Efficient. Predictable. Victorious. The tactical display showed only one obstacle. The human colony of New Carthage. A prosperous mining world with a population of 30 million. According to Dominion intelligence, it possessed a modest orbital defense grid and fewer than 200 military vessels. An easy target. Kovash issued the order. Advance. The fleet accelerated. Minutes passed. Then another officer frowned. No response. Kovash looked up. No response. The colony has detected us. They are broadcasting navigation warnings. Nothing else. The bridge grew quiet. Navigation warnings. As the fleet closed the distance, a vacuum human voice repeated across every open frequency. Warning. You are entering restricted military space. Please alter course. The message repeated. No panic. No threats. Only polite professionalism. Several Cath officers laughed. They are pretending this is a customs inspection. Kovash allowed himself a smile. Continue. On the surface of New Carthage, Governor Amelichun watched the approaching invasion through the planetary command center. The giant display showed thousands of hostile contacts. No one raised their voice. No one rushed. Every station operated with quiet precision. Civilian evacuation. Complete. Orbital elevators. Retracted. Underground shelters. Sealed. Defense network. Standing by. Governor Chen nodded. Then let's welcome our guests. Exactly 12 million kilometers from the planet, the Dominion fleet reached the invisible boundary. Nothing happened. For 3 full seconds. Then space itself changed. Hundreds of tiny lights appeared around the fleet. Not ships. Satellites. Millions of them. They had been drifting silently for decades, disguised as harmless scientific instruments and navigation relays. Now every one of them awakened simultaneously. Kovash frowned. Identify those objects. The answer came too late. Every satellite activated high-powered laser communication arrays. Not weapons. Communications. Within a fraction of a second, each one linked to thousands of others. An enormous quantum targeting web spread across the system. Every Dominion vessel was now being tracked from millions of angles simultaneously. An officer blinked. They're mapping us. Another stared at impossible calculations. Down to individual armor plates. Kovash backed an order. Destroy the satellites. Thousands of Dominion weapons fired. Brilliant beams crossed the void. Hundreds of satellites exploded. Millions remained. Destroying them was like trying to empty an ocean with a bucket. Deep beneath New Carthage's mountains, Colonel Marcus Hale watched the tactical display. The targeting network reached 100% synchronization. He smiled. Good. Phase 1 complete. An operator looked up. They've begun firing. I know. Permission for Phase 2. Hale nodded once. Granted. Across the asteroid belt surrounding the system, ordinary-looking mining platforms suddenly moved. Massive drilling arms detached. Protective plating unfolded. Cargo containers opened. One after another, hundreds of civilian mining stations transformed. Railguns longer than skyscrapers rotated into firing position. Missile silos emerged from beneath industrial equipment. Fusion reactors redirected every watt of power into military systems. The Dominion sensors lit up. Unknown contacts. 500. No. The officer's voice faltered. 800. Every mining station had become a fortress. Kovash felt genuine surprise for the first time. So, they fortified the asteroid belt. His weapons officer grinned. Then we destroy it. Before he could give the order, every fortress fired. Not at the battleships. At empty space. Thousands of projectiles accelerated silently into the darkness. Confused murmurs filled the Dominion bridge. They missed. Kovash narrowed his eyes. No. They aimed somewhere. 3 minutes later, the answer arrived. The metal slugs, traveling at enormous velocities, reached carefully calculated points throughout the star system. Each projectile split apart. Thousands became millions. Millions became billions. A cloud of microscopic tungsten fragments expanded across every projected Dominion flight path. Invisible. Impossible to dodge. The fleet continued forward. Then the first ships entered the cloud. The results were catastrophic. At those speeds, grains of metal smaller than sand struck with the force of powerful explosives. Armor cracked. Sensors vanished. Engines ruptured. Entire destroyers disintegrated without ever seeing what hit them. Bridge alarms screamed. Hull breaches. Multiple impacts. We are under attack. But from where? Panic spread through formations that had never expected invisible weapons. Kovash immediately understood. They weaponized orbital mechanics. Every movement his fleet made had been predicted. The debris wasn't chasing them. They were flying into it. Human commanders still hadn't fired directly at the invasion fleet. Instead, they reshaped the battlefield itself. The Dominion was fighting physics. And physics never missed. Admiral Sophia Reyes observed everything from the command carrier Resolute, hidden far beyond the system's outer planets. An aide looked almost disappointed. Should we engage our battle groups? Reyes shook her head. Not yet. The enemy still believes this is a battle. She watched another Dominion formation scatter as invisible kinetic clouds shredded its formation. It isn't. It's a lesson. Kovash fought to regain control. Reduce speed. Recalculate every projected trajectory. Deploy drones. Thousands of autonomous probes surged ahead. Within seconds, the hundreds vanished as they struck hidden particle fields. Safe corridors appeared. Finally, the fleet slowly advanced. Bruised. Disorganized. But still intact. Kovash allowed himself a breath. We are adapting. Then another officer turned pale. Sir. Multiple hyperspace signatures. How many? The officer swallowed. I can't count them. Space rippled. One signature became 10. 10 became 100. Then 1,000. Human warships emerged in perfect silence. Not from one direction. From every direction. Above. Below. Behind. Even inside regions the Dominion believed impossible to navigate safely. The newcomers held position. They did not fire. They simply surrounded the invasion fleet with calm precision. Kovash stared at the tactical display. The estimated count climbed higher. 2,000. 3,000. 4,000. Still rising. Every vessel carried different markings. Former cargo ships. Converted freighters. Purpose-built destroyers. Ancient reserve battleships. Experimental drone carriers. All operating together as though they had trained for decades. Perhaps they had. Across the open communication channel, the Admiral Reyes appeared once more. This is your final opportunity. Surrender. You have now seen only the outer layer of our defenses. She looked directly into the camera. The next layer shoots back. No one on the Dominion bridge spoke. For the first time in 6,000 years, the Earth war machine had encountered something it had never prepared for. An opponent that had no intention of fighting the war they expected. And as Kovash looked at the impossible armada surrounding him, one terrible realization settled into his mind. This wasn't humanity's main fleet. It was merely the force assigned to welcome the invaders. Predators of persistence. For 16 long seconds, no one fired. The silence itself became a weapon. On every Dominion bridge, tactical officers waited for the order they assumed would come. Thousands of targeting solutions had already been calculated. Every human ship in range had been marked for immediate destruction. Yet Admiral Kovash hesitated. The display before him no longer resembled the battle plans approved by the Dominion High Command. It resembled a trap. Every avenue of retreat was observed. Every formation had been anticipated. Every maneuver his fleet attempted seemed to reveal another layer of preparation. He had spent 40 years studying strategy. Never once had he faced an enemy that appeared more interested in controlling the battlefield than winning it quickly. His communications officer broke the silence. Admiral. Supreme Executor Zakel requests a status report. Kovash answered honestly. We have encountered resistance beyond all projections. The reply came instantly. Destroy it. Nothing more. No questions. No revised orders. Only absolute confidence. Kovash closed the channel. He understood what that meant. The Supreme Executor still believed this was a normal campaign. He wasn't here. He couldn't see what Kovash was seeing. He couldn't feel it. Admiral Sophia Reyes stood aboard the Resolute, watching the Dominion fleet hold position. They're thinking, one of her officers observed. Good, Reyes replied. They'll make fewer reckless mistakes. The young officer looked confused. Wouldn't reckless mistakes help us? Reyes smiled faintly. They would. But our objective isn't to destroy a fleet. She enlarged the holographic display. Our objective is to convince an empire that attacking peaceful civilizations is no longer worth the cost. Several officers nodded. That had always been humanity's doctrine. Victory was not measured by wreckage. Victory was measured by changing the enemy's future decisions. At last, Kovash gave the inevitable command. All batteries. Fire. Thousands of Dominion weapons ignited simultaneously. Lances of coherent plasma crossed the void. Missile swarms accelerated toward the surrounding human formations. Railgun slugs streaked through space at relativistic speeds. It was a barrage capable of erasing moons. The human fleet moved. Not away. Through it. Entire formations broke apart with impossible precision, every ship executing a different vector while remaining perfectly coordinated. Missiles found empty space where targets had been moments before. Plasma beams crossed harmlessly between vessels that seemed to dance through mathematical gaps no living pilot could calculate alone. They predicted our firing solutions, whispered a Dominion weapons officer. No, Kovash corrected quietly. They predicted our doctrine. The difference mattered. Human commanders weren't reacting. They had rehearsed this battle long before it began. Then humanity answered. No dramatic charge. No overwhelming broadside. Just one command from Admiral Reyes. Begin. Across thousands of human ships, compact drones launched into space. Millions of them. Each no larger than a backpack. The Dominion bridge erupted in laughter. Those are their reinforcements. They are sending maintenance drones. Kovash did not laugh. The drones ignored the warships entirely. Instead, they spread throughout the battle space. Within minutes they had deployed sensor buoys, communication relays, repair nodes, decoy emitters, then autonomous fabrication units. Several even began salvaging wreckage from destroyed Dominion ships. They are recycling the battlefield, an officer said in disbelief. Indeed they were. Damaged armor became raw material. Broken missiles became replacement components. Destroyed drones became new drones. Every hour the human logistical network became stronger. Every hour the dominions became weaker. Humanity wasn't merely fighting in space. They were rebuilding space into an extension of their own industry. Elsewhere in the system, Dominion boarding craft succeeded in reaching one isolated human outpost built into an asteroid. Elite shock troops stormed through the corridors. Room by room. Deck by deck. They expected terrified defenders. Instead, they found empty halls. Machines continued working. Lights remained on. Meals still sat warm on tables. The station looked abandoned only minutes before their arrival. Then the walls spoke. A calm synthesized voice echoed through every corridor. Welcome. You have entered a non-essential facility. All personnel have been evacuated. The lead commander snarled. Where are the defenders? The computer answered. You are currently surrounded by automated containment systems. A second later, heavy blast doors sealed every corridor. Artificial gravity shifted violently. Sleeping compartments rotated into armored bunkers. Maintenance shafts became mazes. Non-lethal gas filled selected sections. Construction robots emerged from hidden alcoves, not to attack, but to weld escape routes shut. Within 20 minutes, the Dominion boarding force had been completely immobilized. Not one human soldier had fired a shot. The station itself had defeated the invaders. As reports flooded in, disbelief spread across the Dominion command structure. Supply convoys vanished after encountering hidden drone flotillas. Long-range communications suffered relentless electronic interference. Damaged human ships returned to combat within hours. Damaged Dominion ships never did. Even more troubling were the casualty reports. Human losses were astonishingly low. Not because their ships were invincible. Because they refused to risk lives unnecessarily. Escape pods were recovered within minutes. Medical ships operated just beyond the battle line. Autonomous systems performed the most dangerous tasks. Every life mattered. The Dominion had always measured victory by territory conquered. Humanity measured victory by people brought home. Back in the Galactic Concord, delegates watched the battle through live tactical feeds. The atmosphere was unlike anything in recorded history. No one cheered. No one celebrated. They watched with growing realization. The Hesh elder who had predicted humanity's rapid mobilization spoke softly. We misunderstood them. Another delegate asked, how? We thought they loved war. He shook his head. They don't. They simply refuse to be unprepared for it. Around the chamber, the representatives began reviewing centuries of diplomatic records. Humanity had rarely threatened anyone. They had negotiated patiently. Shared technology. Provided disaster relief. Defended shipping lanes from pirates. The evidence had always been there. Their kindness had never come from weakness. It had come from confidence. Supreme Executor Zakel refused to accept the reports. Impossible. He slammed a claw against the command table. One species cannot overturn 6,000 years of military supremacy. The intelligence minister remained silent. He no longer believed that. A junior analyst hesitantly activated one final projection. It showed something no Dominion strategist had considered. Human industrial output. Since the declaration of war, every day more ships entered service than the Dominion was losing. But the trend wasn't linear. It was accelerating. Factories were expanding themselves. Automated shipyards were constructing additional shipyards. Mining fleets were harvesting enough material to feed exponential production. The graph curved sharply upward. If the war continued for another year, the Dominion would be facing not thousands of human warships, not tens of thousands, but numbers so large that they defied traditional military planning. The analyst's voice barely carried across the chamber. They are not mobilizing to match us. He looked at the impossible projection. They are mobilizing to outlast us. At that same moment, every Dominion flagship received an encrypted transmission. This time it contained no warning. No demand. Only a single sentence from Admiral Sophia Reyes. You wanted a war of conquest. You have awakened a civilization that learned long ago how to win wars of endurance. And deep beneath Earth's mountains, sealed vaults that had remained untouched even after the first mobilization began opening one after another. The oldest contingency plans in human history were no longer theoretical. They were now being executed. The last lesson. 3 months after the Dominion's declaration of war, the galaxy no longer asked whether humanity could survive. The only question left was how much of the Dominion would survive the consequences of its own decision. The maps told the story better than any speech. When the war had begun, Crimson Dominion territory stretched across hundreds of star systems, seemingly unstoppable. Now, every offensive arrow pointed the opposite direction. Not because humanity had launched a campaign of conquest. Because the Dominion's fleets no longer had the strength to advance. Every invasion force had been halted. Every replacement convoy had been intercepted or forced to retreat. Every new strategy had encountered another layer of preparation. The Dominion still possessed millions of soldiers. They still had thousands of warships. But they had lost something far more valuable. Initiative. For the first time in 6,000 years, they were reacting instead of deciding. Inside the Grand War Chamber, Supreme Executor Zakel looked older. His armored exoskeleton bore fresh cracks from sleepless weeks spent inside command bunkers. The reports before him had become unbearable. Industrial output declining. Fuel reserves strained. Fleet readiness falling. Morale deteriorating. His advisors no longer argued about how to win. They argued about what could still be saved. The 5th Fleet has withdrawn. The 7th has surrendered. The 12th requests permission to evacuate civilian sectors before further fighting. Zakel's claws tightened. They surrender to humans? The intelligence minister answered quietly. No. They surrender because the humans accepted it. Silence followed. Humanity had done something the Dominion had never expected. Captured crews were fed. The wounded, friend and foe alike, received medical treatment. Civilian colonies that had supported the Dominion were protected from pirates and raiders instead of being punished. Trade routes reopened wherever fighting ceased. Every liberated system was offered the same simple choice. Govern yourselves. Live peacefully. Trade freely. No tribute. No occupation. No revenge. That confused the Dominion more than any weapon. They had expected conquerors. Instead, they found guardians. Aboard the Resolute, Admiral Sophia Reyes stood before a secure communication channel. The face that appeared belonged to Kovash. The proud Dominion Admiral looked exhausted. His fleet had fought with discipline until the end. Now only a fraction of it remained operational. I requested this conversation, Kovash said, because I finally understand. Reyes remained silent. You never wanted to destroy us. No. You wanted us to stop. Yes. Kovash gave a weary nod. Our historians taught us that power belongs to whoever possesses the strongest fleet. Reyes folded her hands. Our historians teach something different. What? Power belongs to whoever can choose restraint. Kovash lowered his eyes. I used to think restraint was weakness. So did many humans. She smiled sadly. We learned otherwise. Within days, Kovash carried humanity's proposal directly to the Dominion Council. It contained only 3 conditions. First, every occupied civilization would regain its independence. Second, the Dominion would permanently abandon wars of expansion. Third, A joint interstellar council would be established where every member species, large or small, would possess a voice. No reparations. No humiliation. No demands for territory. The council chamber erupted. Some generals demanded continued resistance. Others insisted humanity was setting a trap. Then Kovash rose. I have fought them. The room fell silent. They are not asking because they cannot continue. He paused. They are asking because they no longer need to. No one challenged him. They had all seen the production reports. Human factories continued to launch new ships every day. Human research continued producing new defensive systems. The longer the war lasted, the stronger humanity became. Victory was no longer possible. Only unnecessary loss. After 12 hours of debate, the Dominion voted. For the first time in its history, it accepted peace without claiming victory. 1 year later, representatives from nearly every known civilization gathered once again beneath the transparent dome of the Celestial Forum. The chamber looked the same. Yet everything had changed. Species that had once spoken only through fear now debated openly. Former Dominion client worlds sat beside ancient powers as equals. Trade flowed freely across regions that had known only conflict for centuries. Ambassador Elias Ward returned to the same platform where the war had begun. The delegates watched in respectful silence. Even Supreme Executor Zakel attended. No longer as a conqueror. Simply as a representative of his people. Elias looked around the chamber before speaking. I owe all of you an apology. Confused murmurs spread through the audience. When this war began, he continued, I said you had declared war on the most lethal species alive. He smiled faintly. That wasn't completely true. The room became perfectly still. The most lethal species isn't humanity. It's fear. It convinces civilizations that domination is safer than cooperation. It tells us strength comes from making others weaker. It whispers that violence is the only language our neighbors understand. He let the silence linger. We've listened to that voice before. Our own history is filled with its consequences. He glanced toward Zakel. So is yours. The former conqueror inclined his head. Not in defeat. In agreement. Elias continued. Humanity survived predators, disasters, disease, and wars not because we were born exceptional. We survived because every generation chose to leave the next one a little stronger. A little wiser. A little kinder. Preparation kept us alive. Compassion gave survival meaning. The chamber rose in a standing ovation. Not for humanity alone, but for the possibility that strength and mercy could exist together. Later that evening, a young journalist asked Admiral Reyes the question that had already spread across the galaxy. Were you ever afraid the Dominion would win? Reyes looked toward the stars beyond the forum's great dome. Every commander fears losing. Then when did you know humanity would survive? She smiled. The moment they declared war. The journalist blinked. Why? Because they believed they were attacking a civilization. She looked out into the endless darkness where countless worlds now lived in peace. They never realized they were challenging an idea. What idea? Rey's answer became one of the most quoted lines in galactic history. That ordinary people, standing together, preparing carefully, and refusing to surrender their humanity, are stronger than any empire built on fear. Centuries later, cadets across the galaxy still studied the conflict that had transformed interstellar civilization. Not because it was the largest war ever fought, but because it became the last war of conquest. And every history text began with the same unforgettable sentence. Congratulations, you just declared war on the most lethal species alive. The first lesson every student learned came immediately afterward. Humanity's greatest weapon was never its fleets, its factories, or its soldiers. It was the unbreakable belief that strength exists to protect peace, and that, once awakened, such a civilization can never truly be defeated.